Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Babylon Irons review show with myself, Mike, and Sloth as usual. And today we're going to be dissecting the 1-1 draw against Aston Villa at the weekend. Maybe a bit more controversy on this show with some difference in opinion. So we'll get right into it. And yeah, let's get on with the review. So, lads, another draw. Point gained. Some could argue a couple points dropped. What did you guys make of the overall performance from Sunday? And try not to go into too much detail, but how you felt as a whole from the start to the finish of the match.
I'll let Sloth go first, and then I'll interject.
I think the best way to sum it up is that absolutely no one on that pitch looked like they really were that bothered. And obviously from being there, I understand that we had a shape that we played, and we had a slightly different setup, but there was hardly any impetus from the start, which is something that we've all been very critical of this season. And I think a lot of people will say, yeah, but we got a point. However, the way Aston Villa played, they were so incredibly negative. It was absurd. Like Emi Martinez from the first minute was time wasting. And he was Aston Villa were just playing at the back and passing it about. And this is when I think people were kind of critical of the atmosphere. But it started to pick up a little bit when people were just shouting for Ings, for Bowen, for Benrahma to press, and the players just didn't really appear to expect such a negative performance from Aston Villa, because they knew exactly what they were doing.
Yeah, well, let's take a look at the lineups between the two sides as before we kind of get into the main bulk. But from us, it was pretty much what we expected from our preview. So Zuma came in at the back, Kehrer at right back, and then pretty much the same midfield and forward line as we expected. Similar with Aston Villa, how we kind of expected them to line up. Maybe the shape was a little bit different to what SofaScore says here, but yeah, I think initially when we went into the match, were you guys comfortable with our lineup? Was it kind of what you thought was our best 11 at the time, or was there anything you'd have maybe tweaked from the start? Or what about you, Mike? What do you think?
I think at the moment, whenever I see the lineup, I'm not surprised. It's going to be that lineup. Maybe Antonio comes in over Ings, or Ings goes in over Antonio. That is about as inventive as our lineup gets. Would I say it's our best? No. I think we've talked time and time again of what we believe is our best 11. So I can't say it's our strongest. I can't say it's our best 11, but it is a predictable and it's a very Moyes starting 11. That's all I can say. What I was pleased about is the things that we mentioned prior to the game as to what Villa will do from a defensive line point of view, from their weakness because of that line and their at times inability to deal with crosses is something that we actually look to exploit, which was quite interesting to see. We actually brought this up and we actually saw that being exploited. There are other things that went against us. I wouldn't say get against us because of the referee or anything like that. I say went against us because of our own failings, but we'll get into that as well as we go on.
Yeah, no, I think that both of those points are pretty good. I think Aston Villa, as you mentioned, Sloth, they were there to kind of slow things down and take it a little bit out of us and frustrate us. And it kind of worked, because you could tell the crowd were getting, agitated by us not willing to go in and press when Martinez had the ball, when the centre-backs had the ball. And it's very much a Moyes game plan. He didn't want us to go all out and, completely press them, because he thought, in his eyes, we would get left exposed. And he wanted to keep it more compact and press in certain areas. So it was kind of a game of cat and mouse for long periods of the match, where they would have a lot of possession at the back, but they weren't really doing anything with it. And yeah, I guess before we get into the actual action and, you know, dissect everything that happened, I thought it was quite interesting to look at, you know, the average positions for both teams. So you can kind of see here, you know, we're attacking down, Villa up, if you're looking at the screen. So, you know, you can see Bowen and Benrahma playing actually higher than Danny Ings for us, which is very telling of what we were trying to do in terms of getting in behind, and actually also telling of what Danny Ings was doing throughout the match, which again we'll get into. And you can kind of see there Souček, the more advanced of the midfield three, alongside Paqueta and, you know, Rice inside that left channel, as we've seen throughout the season. And yeah, our kind of attack was based on Emerson down the left. Kehrer didn't really go forwards much, and it was much more on keeping Bowen a little bit higher to try and exploit that high line Villa played. And then it's what we mentioned in the preview, what you said actually, Mike, with Aston Villa, in terms of when they have the ball, they will go into a back three-ish, as you can see with Mings, Konsa and Cash. And, you know, their left back that I think a lot of West Ham fans identified yesterday as a pretty big attacking threat for Aston Villa in Carlos. And, you know, he got forwards a lot down that side. And, you know, that's the area they tried to exploit. And they did it very well at times. And it definitely was a weakness for us, because you had Ramsey then going over to that side. You had Buendia moving all over the pitch. McGinn dragging out Souček, which again we'll get into. But yeah, I thought that was a nice, you know, kind of summary to the introduction of this. And before I kind of continue, we've got a couple comments. One here, Declan Rice is frustrating me more and more each half, which again we'll get into. But yeah, I think there were a few things we could pick out from this. So, Mike, I'm going to hand over to you because you've done some really good analysis on the match, and we'll go through each point step by step from how the match went.
Yeah, so you guys are not privy to the WhatsApp I was in, so I've catered to both parties on this. So don't worry, both parties are going to get their moment to shine and to criticize and to praise players in this. But yeah, one of the things, obviously, we talked around the average positions of Villa. We mentioned this in the preview show, that the way they were set out. Another thing Villa did quite well was to release Douglas Luiz. He would either drop into a left back or a centre back position, with Mings either staying in left centre back or going to left back. Essentially to release him, to draw out Souček and to really kind of compress us, because again, what would happen is Bowen would come inside a bit more, because he would then be trying to cover Ramsey, rather than essentially just allowing Ramsey in that space and kind of entrusting Paqueta and Rice in which to operate in there. And, you know, there were some real pluses and there were some real minuses in how we kind of operated in the kind of first half, particularly in that right-hand side. And I think it's only fair to say, and this is going to appeal to both sides of the argument here, we were strong in attack on that right-hand side, but we were certainly weak in defence. And what we kind of saw early in the game was the positivity that Bowen was bringing going forward. He was really good against Moreno. Moreno struggled for the whole the duration he was on the pitch against Bowen. And again, we made the point, if you're hitting the diagonals against this Villa team who play a very high line, you can start to have some freedoms. And this is obviously, again, no surprise, it's a pass from Aged. We exploit the fact that there is space. They're kind of compressed as well, Villa. So that's why Bowen and also Benrahma were so high, because they compressed so much in the middle. We had spaces out wide. And obviously you can see here, just keep an eye on where Benrahma is. He's on just literally past the halfway line in comparison to where Bowen is. Now, what Bowen did really well was when he got possession, he obviously drove to the byline. He committed Moreno. We actually got two players in the box. I believe it was Souček as well as Danny Ings, with the ball evading both. But it was a brilliant cross with his right foot. And, you know, really, Benrahma probably should have done better. I believe it was on his stronger right foot as opposed to his weaker left. So it was one of those ones where it was a very good chance. Maybe if it was, say, a Cornet or someone with a more natural left foot, it might have been a different story in terms of the finish and the technique on it. But the signs were good in the early stages that we actually had some really good impact down that side, and that we could really start to cause them problems. And this is something that we did quite a bit in that first kind of 15, 20 minutes or so, right up until obviously the inevitable point where Watkins got his goal. And when we go through this is going to highlight where Sloth has had such big problems with Bowen. So obviously the first one's kind of highlighting where Frankie is talked up about Bowen, and there are other sequences we're going to talk about that again highlight where Bowen did well. But this is also going to again kind of present as to the problem that we have, and this isn't just an issue with Bowen. This isn't us picking a Bowen. This is more. It's an issue with us how we are structurally and how we can't deal with certain kind of systems. And to the point we made earlier, there's a back three, essentially, because Moreno's pushed up high, Douglas Luiz has dropped slightly, and obviously you got him with McGinn. Then you've got a three just sitting directly behind the striker. So what is frustrating in this point is the lack of awareness, also the lack of the press. Now, you could argue that obviously you got Paqueta in the right centre, just where McGinn is, and then you have Danny Ings in the centre between Luiz and McGinn. Now, Luiz can't pass the ball into Ramsey because Souček has essentially got him in his shadow. He's not going to pass there. Now, Bowen should have been aware of this. And again, this is a setup issue with us that we have effectively allowed ourselves to be compressed. Obviously, they're not even going to pass it out to the far right to Bailey as well, because Rice is in a position to cut that out as well. So they only have one pass, which is due to Bowen being in the position he's in, and they pass it to Moreno. Had Bowen been there, the likelihood is they'd have had to slow him down, gone backwards, or just try to probe or try a riskier pass. But because of that space is given to them, all of a sudden we turn out into this position. Now, if we go back to this picture here, look where Bowen and look where Souček are. Bowen is actually slightly deeper, but when the ball is played through and Moreno goes through, look where Bowen is in terms of his tracking back. Look where Souček is. Now, Souček gets back, but he doesn't come across to give support to Kehrer. Now, I've seen a lot of people saying that he should have come out to Moreno. Now, if he comes out to Moreno, he's going to play it down the line to Ramsey. It's not as simple as, Zuma's going to get there, because the likelihood Ramsey gets there first, he can play a one-time ball into the box to Watkins. So if Kehrer steps out, it leaves a gap behind. So Kehrer gets crucified either way, really, based on how some of our fans are commenting. But ultimately, Bowen didn't get back in position quickly enough or support enough. Souček should have also come across in which to add additional support. And then what actually happens is we're caught in this halfway house of no one really doing anything. It's more about staying in shape than actually trying to press or influence play. What was also frustrating, so if we go back to here, is Agade is in a decent position with Watkins at first. He's actually in a position where he's got him. He can see, obviously, his number. And that's always a good thing. If a defender can see the number of a striker, you're in a good place. But then what transpires is Agade actually loses Watkins. Watkins then gets to see Agade's number. There's a 2v1 versus him. It is a good cross, but again, no pressure from us at all. And it's a good glancing header. And it just kind of showed again that those frailties. It's all about trying to maintain a shape rather than being spatially aware of what's happening around you. And then it's the not having the conviction to sprint back and to kind of stop the play and actually kind of influence what's happening. And it happened time and again in that first half where they consistently would bomb down that side. Now, I'm going to open this up to the guys now, because obviously I know they've had some very strong views, especially on the last one. So I'm going to kind of open up to kind of get their feel on that, because that's what I felt was a problem, particularly in the first half, is our inability to deal with the inverted wingers, in particular down their left, our right. And it just caused us untold problems and put a lot of pressure on Kehrer, which I felt was possibly unfair, because then he was getting a lot of stick in terms of the fans as to coming out too quickly or there being spaces and so on.
Look, I'm going to start this by saying this isn't me just berating Bowen for the sake of berating Bowen. It's a case of you have Kehrer as your right back. You know you need to give him cover, because let's face it, he has got moments of just switching off in him. You can't do that when you're at the bottom of the league, because it will cost you. Bowen needs to cover. He needs to cover. And that's what has to happen. But he improved in the second half with his covering, but that's irrelevant. because we've already conceded a goal. We're already behind. And as I said, the lack of pressing worked at both ends of the pitch. And I just found our entire setup so negative. It didn't matter that we'd switched to a 4-3-3 sort of formation, because Ings was totally isolated. And I tweeted out the other day that fans have been screaming for this Prem-proven finisher, this player to come in and help us score us goals. And it's irrelevant if when your wingers aren't providing great service, but also the sort of play that allows you to concede. If you're not helping out defensively, then it's irrelevant how many goals or assists you get, because you are conceding goals. You are losing points for your side. Now, to counter that, and Ben Wymer's finishing was woeful. It was a great penalty, but he had some good opportunities that he wasted. Now, look, that's part and parcel of football. People miss chances. But what I can't abide by is players who repeatedly play with the same team member and don't help them out that little bit more. If you know a player's out of form, track back and help him more. And I think one of the reasons fans are quite rightly disappointed with Declan Rice is because we've seen him more and more this season throwing his hands up and getting frustrated. And when your talismans start to do that, players like Bowen not covering back, players like Rice throwing their hands up, and players like Kehrer with their moments of madness, just kind of slipping and allowing the opposition these chances, it all bubbles up, and it is this recipe for disaster. Now, do I think that Bowen was solely to blame? No, of course I don't. That's a silly statement. But do I think he had a good game? Attacking wise, yeah, he beat his man quite a few times, but he never really worked the keeper properly. And if you're seeing that Ben Wymer's constantly missing chances, take some shots yourself. Take that onus on yourself. And I don't feel like he did that. He didn't grab the game by the scruff of the neck. And more importantly, the manager is to blame for this. It's a case of, Ings is totally isolated. He's not putting himself about. Get someone else on. I think all three of us will agree that Antonio is incredibly frustrating, but he would have done a lot more in that game than Ings. And the total lack of foresight, total lack of, as I've continually said, repercussions for poor performances or not helping out and putting in a shift when you're calling out other players for that is so incredibly frustrating. As you can tell, it's one of the things that is really, really pushing my buttons this season.
I think from my point of view is with the whole Bowen situation is, look at the positives we were mentioning from Bowen. I mean, like for this clip, for example, he wouldn't be in that position to kind of be for that spread of pass if he was constantly having to play as a second right back all of the time, just because he has someone like Kehrer or Johnson behind him. I don't think that the responsibility should rely on someone like him, because even if you look in that first half, we've picked out one moment here where Bowen perhaps should have tracked back better. I completely agree with that. But there were definitely times in that first half where he did track back. I remember one, very clear memory of him tracking back, winning the ball with a tackle, and then it set us off on a counter. Now, that won't get picked up. That will not get picked up by people because they will pick out the negative moments, which is absolutely fair.
That is one example, granted, of the defending, but it was one example that happened consistently throughout the half. Yes, he did track back and he did win some tackles and he did win some, but ultimately he's not just him. It was a structural problem, but the inability in which to be aware of whether you've one of your teammates has a player essentially in their shadow, so you're removing that pass option. So then coming across to do it, Bowen should have been aware of what was happening with Moreno.
Look, from how I kind of saw it is a lot of the time when we're going down that right hand side, especially yesterday, Souček was glued to McGinn for that first half, glued to him. He was told to basically man mark him. So McGinn was drifting away. It was leaving so much space in behind there. When Dia was doing another thing where he's picking up pockets between Rice had him in his vision. Paqueta, again, did very well when we had control of the ball, but got frustrated in the second half and was easily getting, taken on, and other parts of the game that weren't good enough from him. And that's where the space was. And that's why they decided to push their fullback so high on that left-hand side. So I think that, yes, Bowen should have tracked back in that situation. But think about it logically. You can't sprint for 90 minutes doing attacking and defending for 90 minutes. Because look at what Bowen's done offensively. 7 take-ons, 7 dribbles completed. Look at the crosses he put in for Benrahma. Like that, and then you say, "Oh, Bowen needs to take it onto himself." When he's put Benrahma up for a chance from 10 yards, there's nothing more he can do in that situation.
Hang on, one second, guys. I'll just jump in really quickly. So obviously we're suggesting that Villa didn't target our right hand side. They 100% targeted our right hand side. They knew Bowen would be lax.
No.
They knew
they targeted our left-hand side because we had Kehrer playing right back. Let's make that very clear.
It weren't you push your fullback that high if you know one of the winger is not going to track. They they made sure Ramsey was on there as well, so it puts Kehrer in a bind where he either comes out of position to track Ramsey or one of our midfielders have to commit. They deliberately targeted that side to either draw Bowen inside or to exploit the fact that they knew he wouldn't go forward, and they could then create 2v1s with an underlap or an overlap on that side. They knew full well, as good as Bowen is, and as much as he will work, he does have lapses defensively. They 100% targeted that side. And the moment we changed it up in the second half, where all of a sudden we brought, as we should have done from the very offset, if we're going to be allowing Bowen to be more further forward, as the average positions show, we spread our midfield and Souček came a lot more on that right-hand side to cover. Obviously, they then made a change being on Bertrand Traore, and then they switched to trying to go down their right-hand side as opposed to our left, because we started to defend it better, because we had Souček providing more help. So therefore, we'd have 2 or 3 Winsby on that side to support it. Once we did that and corrected our tactical problem and supported the fact that Bowen was sitting higher and maybe a bit too high, they then switched and started to go down the other side. It's not right for us to say that Villa did not target us, because they did. It was a clear tactical.
I didn't say they didn't target us. They did target us down that side. But I think the reason they targeted is not solely because they're saying, "Oh, Bowen doesn't track back," because that's not what happened. It was because
I don't think we can say that they knew we was going to start Kehrer.
Well, no, the problem
or Kehrer, it doesn't matter who. Take your pick.
Frankie, I think the problem is that they know Bowen is prone to switching off. Yeah, and look, they also targeted that side because Kehrer was there. You're spot on with that. And I did say in the group chat yesterday, if Soufal's there, doesn't happen, because Soufal will either commit or he will be further back. He's more switched on and he reads their game better. However, I'm not expecting Bowen to run for 90 minutes, because we should have a manager who actually sees that we need to play intense football. You can't keep that up for 90 minutes. He needs to be shouting at Bowen, "Wake up, get back, get working and covering your right back," because he sometimes is prone to switching off. And look,
it's the same thing we used to say about Felipe Anderson.
Yeah,
in some ways.
But the issue is that this could have easily been solved if we'd added a bit of pace, or we'd had a manager who was a bit more proactive. And we have these substitutions, increased substitutions, for a reason, but he's not using them at all. And as I said as well yesterday, when he did make changes, they're far too late. It doesn't help anyone. It's absolute madness to think that you can just leave a player on for 90 minutes and they'll give that same exact intensity all the time and run up and down the touchline. But if you said to Bowen, look, cover Kehrer a bit more for 60 minutes, and then I'm going to give you a break, unless you're having an absolute barnstormer of a game. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give Cornet some minutes because he needs to get match fit. He's not going to go, I hate that plan, because, you know, he's supposedly a good boy and he works for the team, and that's what modern footballers should do, be part of the game plan. But we don't have a manager who thinks like that. So
yeah, no, I agree with that. I do think there are moments, especially with that goal, where Bowen could have tracked back better. But like, even in that goal, I don't think that comes from, like, it doesn't solely come from Bowen. Like that should never ever be a goal, even when they have that position. Like, if we bring it up here, like where it initially gets to, like, look where the cross comes in from, and look at the danger in his position. It comes from Aged, and I feel like we're not going to talk about Aged as much because it's Aged, and he has quality at centre back, and we've said his qualities. But this is like the third or fourth time this season where he's lost his man in the box and they've scored.
Yeah, and to be fair,
if that was Dawson, fans would be going mental, absolutely mental.
No, but to be fair, I did criticise again, say he was wrong. But again, if we're going to talk about how much the ball travelled, this one here, look where Bowen is, deeper than Souček. Look where he is here. So if we're going to talk about he works his arse off, we also have to then call out where he's clearly not.
I'm not saying he works his arse off. I'm saying we can't expect him to do both things
and
for 90
players
minutes.
are not running into the ground. We have subs. We're not using them. But anyway, look, we'll touch on that in a bit. We will touch on that and we will go into it because I think it's something we have to talk through.
One thing I do want to raise one more point, and I think it's a real issue with this season, is that you look at how the defense was passing for the entire 90 minutes, constantly passing behind the man. Aston Villa are playing on the back foot and they are playing in a negative style. Yet you had Zuma passing 2 yards behind Aguerd. You had Kehrer passing 2 yards behind the centre-back. What are we doing that we cannot play it into feet or into someone's stride? Because doing that, it sounds silly, but you push Villa further back. You give ourselves the impetus, and yet there's not enough defensive leadership. And people keep saying about Zuma and how great he is when he plays, but this same issue of negative setup remains. And look, Zuma is a strong centre-back, but if even he can't change that, then we have to start asking questions of why this negativity persists, particularly with ball-playing centre-backs. When we have, I'm going to say it, one of the very best in the Premier League, because they can put passes and they can do that all day long. But the amount of times we slowed down the play and didn't keep the intensity just by hitting it 2 yards behind either centre-back or either wing-back was so incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, so, right. We've done a lot of negativity. We will kind of go into something that was positive. We obviously scored a goal. We'll also talk around the missed chances. And now the missed chances, people will either say it was a positive or a negative. You have to look at the positives as well within those missed chances. But let's kind of go through, we didn't shrink. We didn't kind of go within ourselves. The crowd didn't boo when we went 1-0 down. The crowd did also cheer. It was a bit flat, granted, but the crowd were there and they were at times trying to bring something. But, it wasn't a raucous crowd. I think we can all say that. But we did have some sustained pressure in the first half. We did put them under the cosh from time to time. And one of those was at a corner. And what was quite good within this corner is, again, it was a good delivery, sharp delivery from Bowen. Both Rice and Souček did their job in acting as blockers and screens. They stopped the Villa defence really trying to get out. And what made me happy was Emi Martinez, obviously flapping at the ball. He kind of went into his own players. I think the only West Ham player there was Danny Ings, and he kind of really collides with his own and flaps at it. But again, sorry, I didn't mention this, but the positioning of Paqueta was really smart. Just hung at the back post. No one paid him any mind, any attention. And then when it kind of flaps, obviously he drops, he anticipates where it's going, and he kind of hits it into the ground, which is unfortunate. And then obviously Ings gets a good clearance off the line. Sorry, Mings even off the line. But what he then does, it's his touch as well. When that ball comes over his shoulder, it just stopped dead. And that's what put Bailey in a bind. And it was a soft penalty. I don't think there's any two ways about it, but it was so clumsy from Bailey. He's all over the back of him. He kind of clips his leg slightly, but the problem is he's all over the back of him and kind of brings him down. So you understand why the ref give it. And the referee's position, he's looking directly at it. All he can see is Bailey's arms are all over him. He's getting tangled up, and then both players collapse to the floor. In open play, that's going to be a penalty. Soft or not as a foul, it's going to be a penalty in open play anywhere else on the pitch. So has to be in the penalty box. So you have to commend the ref to actually saying, well, yeah, if I'm going to give that as a penalty, as a foul outside, I have to give it on the inside. And then going against Emi Martinez, who's been brilliant at penalties in the World Cup, Benrahma absolutely funded it into there. It was a brilliant finish. He absolutely smashed it, and I sit that end as well to the right of the goal, and he absolutely levered it from there as well. But we kind of looked like we was maybe going to get back in. We were starting to look good on the ball, and we're starting to actually show some promise. Like again, there were still frailties, there were still issues with how they attacked on our right hand side. Watkins had a very good opportunity, but a brilliant save from Areola. But in moments not long after that, we also had a good opportunity as well. And the problem is we wasted chances. We were profligate in front of goal. The one thing you can say is some people go, well, we were wasteful. The other thing you can say is we were creating chances. You have to be there to miss them. So as easy as it is to criticize, say, Benrahma for the number of chances he missed, what is also encouraging is how many chances he actually got involved in, how many times he actually got to have that shot. Yeah. And what's encouraging is that he kept going regardless. And sometimes that's the hardest thing to do, is to keep going when you are missing chances, to keep believing or trying to actually score. And, it was just so frustrating that the missed chances that we had. But one of them, again, it came from a corner. The ball kind of got cleared out. We managed to win possession. Obviously, Kerr's in a great position where he could have received the ball. But again, Villa are already kind of aware of that. Moreno's moving out. He had a pass into Bowen potentially. And what Benrahma does, he just takes a moment to compose himself. Obviously, we can see we had players in the area as well. So some players would have just tried to force it down the line. The ball would have been cut out. But he took that moment to compose himself. And then it's a good delivery into the area. As we said again, Villa play a high line, or their line is not very good at tracking runners in behind. They're not very good at crosses. It's just another moment where we got the ball with a good delivery, and Souček and Zuma go in. Zuma really should be doing better. He should at minimum be hitting the target. There may be a claim from some saying that, well, Souček was there as well. He may have disguised it. But not to be funny, defenders go in for these challenges all the time in their own box and manage to clear and control where they're heading the ball. He should be able to do the same. And you could tell even he knew he should have at least got it on target by his reaction. But again, it was another good cross. It was another good ball. And it was another chance wasted. Had that one gone in, and I think actually, sorry, this might have been before the Ings one, we probably would have seen the game out. Because Villa weren't really threatening. They were making inroads down that side, but they didn't really actually trouble our goal, apart from the Watkins goal, and then obviously the Watkins half chance that was very well saved. And this is constantly throughout the game, and it's just going to bring out another clip. But again, there are so many more instances where we got at Villa, and another one. This was from defending our own corner. So our corner, it kind of got cleared. Paqueta lays it into Rice. Rice first time plays it. Again, this was one of the few times Rice was playing it quickly and not labouring on the ball. Plays it quickly into Mings, who probably, I think, fortunately, kind of got it slightly mixed in his feet and then managed to flick it out wide to Paqueta. And then this is something Paqueta was doing in the game, where he was trying to be positive, trying to get forward, trying to connect. Some of his passes didn't come off, and it did lead to frustration. But again, someone who consistently keeps trying to make positive things and positive actions in a game. And it's very easy to criticize when those things don't come off. but we have to also acknowledge that it's someone trying to influence, someone trying to take responsibility.
Yeah.
And if we're going to complain about players not taking responsibility, not running, not passing, not shooting, we then have to commend the ones when they are doing it. Regardless of the outcome, we also have to then praise when they are giving something. And, you know, what Paqueta did was he got to the edge of the area, he slowed it down to allow Ings and Benrahma to kind of get in there and support. Now, had maybe we had Cornet or someone with a bit more pace, this may have ended up in a goal because Cash has no idea of what's going on around him. Again, maybe Ings could have been, sprinting hell for leather. Maybe Benrahma could have, although Benrahma did make up a lot of ground to get here. But the ball was absolute quality, straight across the 6-yard area, exactly where you want it to be for someone coming in to tap in at the far post. Unfortunately, it doesn't get there. Benrahma picks it up, kind of has a little bit of a mazy, and then it was a quality shot. Unfortunately, it wasn't on target. Had it been on target, I'm not quite sure Emi Martinez was getting to it because it had so much pace and whip on it, but it was just a bit too far out. And it was kind of the story of the game. You know, we had ample opportunities where we were getting in. I think the last one that Moreno had as a go, sorry, I actually think it was Dino, one of the first kind of chases he had with Bowen, ended up with Bowen knocking it past him and then passing it back to Fornals. Unfortunately, Bowen overcooked the pass. He's passed it slightly behind Fornals. You could argue maybe Fornals should have waited half a second more, but in the situation we're in, I can't actually blame Fornals. You have to, in that case, question the person making that pass and playing it behind him because they had got past their marker. Was his weaker foot? I guess the only kind of thing you can say, but it is still a 5-yard pass. And again, there's another opportunity. Again, Bowen, as we said, he was brilliant in attack. Really was. It was putting in some quality crosses with his weaker foot. Even Benrahma was doing some quality crosses on his weaker foot, something that we haven't seen enough of, and he was doing it. And, you know, gets it across. There's I think a flick from Ings, and he's had to take it on the chest. And then you have to credit Ashley Young. It was a fantastic block. It was at times it was unfortunate. I think right at the very start of the half, Benrahma had another brilliant opportunity, but again, Martinez actually just happened to be in the right place to save. And it's one of those games where, and I think it's one of those seasons, you know, last year we would have seen probably at least one of those go in and fly into the back of the net. This year it's not going. And whilst it's disappointing, sorry, I'll just whilst it's disappointing that we weren't converting, and that means we got the draw. The positive I can take is that we did create chances, and not only did we create them, we had players kept going. The likes of Bowen was positive in attack. Benrahma was positive. There were other weak links, and we'll now start to touch on where those weak links were. But there were some positives. I think we have to take a slight step back and actually acknowledge there were some good pieces within the game and things that were encouraging. But the problem was we were, for that first half, in control up to about the 60th minute. By about 66th minute, Villa started to make changes. And that's when we lost our impetus. At that point, we were on top. Arguably, there was blood in the water, but we didn't smell it until the game was gone in that respect for us to chase it. And I think that's the problem. As Sloth was making earlier, we don't have a manager who goes for the win. I've said it to the guys that for me, when I looked at that game, it was a manager who's so scared of losing, he's afraid to even win. And by that, I mean to make early gambles, to bring players on, to switch things up. Granted, players are playing well, but sometimes you have to then swap out a player to bring in someone else for something fresh. And that's what Villa did, what we didn't.
Well, I think one of the real disappointments for me is that Scamacca got absolutely 0 minutes, and I just thought it was disgraceful, really, because when you have a forward who has 10 touches for the entire time that he's on the pitch, how you can justify that as a decision? And it's not a dig at Ings because we didn't play to his strengths. And as I said, you know, it should really worry people that we have got someone of his quality of finishing and we are not utilising him. Now, that's not to say our wingers aren't doing their jobs, because they were. But it's about how we play, and it's about the tactics that we set up with. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that if you put Scamacca on for the final 30, you have a player who's a lot more just physically adept and able to challenge more in the air, but is also a better link-up man. We know that one of his idols is Ibrahimovic, and we've all seen how good his first touch and his technique is. So to say that he would have absolutely delighted with Bowen or Benrahma, either side of him, running those flanks like they were doing, to me is just a nonsense, because it was, as I said, a game that was there for the taking. It's not saying that Villa played badly. They just played negatively because they knew how our manager was going to play and set up, and how he would not make changes because, as Mike said, he was scared of winning. And it's baffling to me that people are criticising Scamacca or his attitude, this rumour, instead of actually saying, no, there's a bigger problem here, and the players have to hold up their end of that. However, it's very, very clear that if you're not going to try and win a match, then at this end of the table, you're going to end up in the mire. You're going to end up in trouble. So who do you blame?
I think from my point of view, we were pretty good in the first half, other than that lapse of concentration a couple of times. Like, their goal came out of nothing. Like from a large portion of that match before they scored, a lot of what they had was just in their own box, moving it from backwards to sideways, back to their goalie. And then we were getting success when we had the ball. So I think overall in the first half, we created enough chances and looked pretty threatening from what we were doing to kind of take it to them in the second half. We did that for about 10 to 15 minutes in the second half, where we had a few chances. And then as soon as Unai Emery made those changes, we kind of froze, and Moyes froze in the dugout. He didn't know kind of what to do or what to change in kind of response to that. Or even what would have been nice is to see Moyes do something at a similar time, if not slightly before Emery, to kind of show our attitude towards that match in trying to win it. Because as Sloth mentioned, that game was there for the taking. It really, really was. Defensively, Aston Villa are not good. They are really not good. So it was kind of like, well, Moyes doesn't trust our defense. So it's kind of like a 50-50 stick or twist situation. And we know what Moyes will do in that situation. He'll stick and hope that we get something in response to that. And I think, again, we've seen the message so many times this season. It's, if you have a point, respect it, don't lose it. If we can't, if we can't win the game, don't lose it. And I think that is his biggest flaw as a manager, and always will be, because the chances are there and it's very obvious, especially when I know there's sometimes on the bench we won't have the options to bring on. Yesterday we did. We had Cornet, we had Scamacca, we had Fornals, we had Lanzini, we had even Downs, a lot of different players that could have changed that match and impacted it in a positive way. He chose to stick with the likes of Souček, that was, again, anonymous. The likes of Danny Ings got 85 minutes, who he was just hoping would get that chance like the Forest game. It wasn't like that. Be a bit more proactive. Look at Arsenal. They're there in the league where they are because Mikel Arteta will make changes if the game isn't going his way, even if they're drawing. He will go out for a win and he'll make changes, even if it means taking off someone like Martinelli, that's their top goal scorer this season. So it's what Moyes needs to do better. And I think that was our biggest issue yesterday, was the lack of changes and trying to win the match.
I was just going to say, like you mentioned about Scamacca's attitude, this thing has been kind of presented. Moyes also dispelled that by also saying his application is good. He mentioned about his link play is good. He's worried about his physical side. Now, what we can only assume that is one, fitness. Two, could be that he doesn't think he runs around enough.
You've just signed a 30-year-old with an NHS bill, like an NHS visit list as long as my arm. You've also got another 30-plus-year-old who has hamstrings made of jelly. It's an absolute farce that he is falling back on these silly little ideas, because I'm going to give him credit with the fact that he brought Cornet on, because Cornet was catching them. He had them left in the dust. But the problem was he did it too late, and that meant he was getting himself caught offside because he was trying to impress, and he was trying to he wanted to try and win the game, as opposed to sitting back and trying to make the intelligent run, leaving it that little second where you've got the pace to beat the man, and you know that, but you want to impress, so you're going early. And that's all down to when you make the substitution. Getting yourself into the feel of the game is huge, but how are you supposed to do that with 10 minutes? And as we said, like, Cornet had some good chances, but you need to be able to get yourself warmed up. And I just think it was absolutely shocking management yesterday.
Yeah. So I'm gonna plug what a video recorded me and Frankie did earlier. That's going to come out tomorrow. Where we talk about the kind of Scamacca thing, and kind of how we feel he's been treated and everything. But you hit the nail on the head about the subs. They made subs in about the 60th minute, 66th minute, and that started to change the momentum of the game. We were on top of that period. Now, we brought on Fornals in the 77th because he was worried Paqueta might get a yellow card. Paqueta looked like he was frustrated. Basically, he was sick and tired of not having someone to pass to. Danny Ings was almost anonymous. Had he turned around in the 65th minute or so and gone, I'm going to bring on Scamacca, and I'm going to take off Souček, and I'm going to bring on Cornet, and said, you two are going to work those centre-backs. I want Scamacca, I want you coming short. Cornet, I want you running behind. Basically, leave that defence not knowing where it's coming. You then got Benrahma and Bowen on the other sides, who are going to be working those fullbacks. We're essentially going to go 4-on-4 with that defence. And that defence was rickety and was ricketing in that game. Had we done that, and again, Scamacca is an intelligent player. If you look at Carrick, for instance, what he's done with Akpom. Akpom was a centre forward. He moved into attacking midfield. You turn around to Scamacca and say, I want you to drop off a Cornet and Cornet to be that main man. And I want you to work in the hole. I want you to link play and to draw players into you, because we know he has good feet. He can hold off a player. He can take it past a player and then link play. The fact of the matter is, and I've said it countless times, and I even said it in our video that we're going to put out about tomorrow, I think. Moyes thinks games can be won in moments. Now, that is kind of true. But his whole idea in football is almost predicated on that fact that moments change games and you win in moments. A goal can come from anything or anywhere. He had Scamacca stripped off, ready to come on for about 5-6 minutes. Now, the moment that through ball went through to Cornet when he was offside and then hit it straight at the goalkeeper, he sat him down, because in his mind, those are the moments now. This is the moment, or that is a moment that now identifies and also puts the exclamation point on my theory, on my thought process that he can get in behind all the time. It was the right sub. Granted, it was the right sub to bring on Cornet and put him up top. I do not criticise that. The problem is he brought him on too late. He left Souček on, who was offering nothing. We had no one to link the ball to. He could have brought on Cornet and used him exactly as he did with Ings and said, you have no involvement in play. Your only involvement is to consistently break in behind that back line. He gave him 20 minutes, 30 minutes. He played 45 minutes for the under-21s. He played up 10 minutes the other day. There is no way you cannot say to a player like him, I'm going to give you 30 minutes and I just want you to run yourself into the ground for 30 minutes. Again, why was not Lanzini brought on? He brought on Fornals in the 77th minute for Paqueta because he's worried about Paqueta getting a card. Then why not bring in Fornals and Lanzini?
I think that what frustrated me as well was, Villa were making these changes even near the end with maybe, I don't even know when it was. They brought on Callum Chambers for, I think, Ollie Watkins. Yeah. And that was the moment Unai Emery was happy for a point. He was starting to make more defensive substitutions and he looked happy with what he'd got, which fair play to Villa. Coming to us is a decent point, even though where we are in the position that we're in. But as soon as that's made, get Scamacca on the pitch. Don't sit him back down. You know, with the impetus is on us in this situation. Villa are sitting comfortable in mid-table. We've had a lot of chances in the match. We've seen how fragile they are defensively. They haven't really offered much of an attacking threat other than those couple of glimpses in the first half where they got the goal from pretty much nothing, and obviously the Ollie Watkins chance. But for the majority of the game, we had the better of the chances, and we looked a much more dangerous team. So I don't know why on earth Moyes just won't gamble in a situation. He's so stuck on just being very conservative and being very happy with 1 point, but we can't be happy with 1 point anymore.
It's not just to gamble, Frankie. It's the fact that he looks at players and goes, "You still have more in your tank to run in this game."
Yeah,
and that's fine, but also it doesn't also work on the thing of, but your tank is almost running empty. It's like, I'm going to make you run until your tank is empty, and then I'm going to bring someone on in 10 minutes, and then after the game, I'm going to turn around and go, yeah, they had flashes, but they didn't bring me enough. He talks about players like Scamacca saying, well, he needs to bring more into games, he needs to do more. But you're not giving him the minutes in which to do that. If you bring on players for 5-10 minutes at a time, how do you expect the likes of a Fornals to get into the pace of the game and create something? Now, Fornals, granted, he almost had an opportunity with a long ball over the top, and it just went past his toe to bring it down. But again, you're bringing in players cold into games and you're not giving them the time in which to grow into it. You're essentially going and saying you need to make an immediate impact, or you're not in the team next week.
Yeah, my biggest concern right now is we only have very limited matches left now. We have 12 games left, 6 home games, 6 away games. As James says, yeah, probably had more minutes than Cornet, but we have 6 home games, 6 away games. We've won 1 away game this season. So these home games are the games we need to win. You know, we need to pick up 3 points from. You know, look at our away games. We've got to go to City. We've got to go to places like Selhurst Park. We've got to go to places like Brentford Stadium. You know, these are not easy games for us because we can't even win in any away game, let alone those kind of games. So it's going to be very tough. And then you look at our home games, in our next couple games, we have to win them. We've got Southampton and Newcastle. And then after that, we've got Arsenal, we've got Liverpool, we've got United. We cannot rely on just pulling off a big performance at home against one of those teams, which I wouldn't, put it past us and getting 3 points from one of those matches, but it might be too late by that point. This 3 points on Sunday or yesterday was there, and it should have been ours, and it should have been, in Moyes' mind, there for the taking, and he should have acted on that rather than kind of being very conservative and just, like you mentioned, not taking someone like Souček off when he's clearly just doing nothing, just impacting the game in no way whatsoever. And, it just looks out of steam. Even Rice yesterday looked completely uninterested and, just off the pace as well. So there's clearly a bigger issue in there. It's come out on X's podcast today that even the players are very much against Moyes' philosophy, and they're starting to question a lot of things, and the board themselves have concerns. This is probably a separate video from this review, but I just want to end by saying, that was 2 points dropped yesterday. As well as we played in spells and moments, people will say, okay, we've come away with it with a point, let's move on. That's 2 points dropped in a massive relegation battle where there's 8 teams. It's not like there's 3 or 4 teams. There's 8 teams in there. We can't afford to be dropping points like that.
My big worry is that we will completely spaff up our chance at not just staying in the league, but any sort of a trophy. Because you look at the if we couldn't beat Aston Villa, who set up incredibly defensively, were very negative, and we're at home. Let's not forget that. Like it's one of those games that we have to be winning, and we set up like that. Imagine what he's going to do if we get to a European final. Imagine if we make it to the Conference League final, and we saw how rigid he can be with the Europa League. If we get to the Europa Conference final, imagine how turgid the football could be if we're put up against someone like Fiorentina, someone who can really hit us on the break. And
I kind of care less about the European.
You could also be in relegation.
I don't really care about the football in terms of if we win the trophy playing crap football, give me the trophy. Right now, it's not the fact that we're playing shit football. It's the fact that our approach is wrong and it could cost us in the league.
I'm not just commenting on the football. I'm commenting on the quality of the management and the way we set up from the start, which is, we could well get to the final, but I have absolutely zero faith in Moyes that he would actually go out to try and win the game. Now, I know that sounds ridiculous and people might laugh at that, but how you can watch that game yesterday when we're on our own patch and we're in a relegation battle and we don't make any changes, and yet you can go, yeah, no, I think he's going to go out to try and win a game. What is giving you that impression? Because you've been watching a different West Ham this season to me, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think the last two things I'm going to kind of touch on, I think there's one point we just need to give it like a little 5 minutes before we wrap up. But statistically now, I think we have won 15 games out of our last 53 games in the Premier League. That essentially equates to 38 games where we haven't won a game.
Mental.
We've almost, if you take away those wins, that's a whole season of not winning. Now, obviously, that's spread over 2 seasons, but if you want us to put it like that, it's quite startling. And yet, he's still, as a manager, he is still backed by some fans as he will get us out because look what he did in Europa League. Sentimentality is going to drag this.
Well, let's not.
One last thing to say, because then we can talk about this other thing, which I think is probably more important than just that stat. After the game, the fans booed. I don't believe the fans booed the team, the players. I feel what happened was it was just a complete and utter frustration at the manager, his lack of willing to go for the points, go for the win. I think people would have preferred to have lost 2-1 with a last-minute defeat to Villa, and we'd have actually gone for it, than it to have been a 1-0. I know that sounds stupid, but Alex Ferguson always had this thing as he would rather lose a game 3-0 than lose it, 2-1 kind of thing, or lose a game, 2-0 than lose it.
He'd rather go for the win if it's drawing. That was his philosophy.
Exactly, and it's the point that we didn't do that, and I think the fans were booing the manager, not the players. And then he again has the audacity to say, I believe the players should have been supported for how they played. The players were supported in that 90 minutes. Yes, it was quiet, but the players were supported even when we went 1-0 down. The problem is he's not understanding, or he's outwardly not acknowledging that he is the person that is being.
He's just so it's so self-centered and arrogant of what he's done as a manager and what he believes he's done. He holds himself on a very, very different stool to what we do. We've seen it in so many conferences already where he says, I think West Ham fans, they should look at what I've done in the last 2 years. We've got 6th and 7th, so come on, stick with us.
As we said,
I don't care, bro. I don't care what you're saying.
One of the things that I was going to say was just that, I even think that look, I think we all appreciate what Moyes has done, and that's not even up for debate. As much as I want him at the club, I'm gonna, if I saw him in the street, I'd be polite and I'd happily chat with him. But it's a case of now I think even that pocket of people who still want him because they've seen these good times, they admit that he is it's not good enough. And so I don't even think it's a question of the fans. It's a case of he has got support at the board because they are so totally inept that they're not going to do anything. And that's the big problem. It's not the fans because and he's only gonna hurt himself more if he continues to say, I think they deserve more support. Okay, well, I think we deserve more goals. I think we deserve more wins. But you're the person to blame for that, Moyes.
It's done. He's burnt the bridges with the fans. He's done that by saying the stuff he said when we took 5,000, 6,000 to United away midweek. We then took 3,000 to Brighton to lose 4-0. 3 days later, 2,000 of us were out in Cyprus for Europe. Back again at the stadium. 60,000 yesterday. There's no denying that we are continuing to support the club. If that wasn't the case, we wouldn't show up to the matches because we know what's going to happen. We all know how the pattern of play is going to be whenever we go to that stadium. We all know how it's going to play out. We're just hoping that we might get a result that will keep us up. Yeah, that's what it is.
And I think that's the whole point, right? The board are also hoping. It's like the board have gone to bed with a slightly upset stomach. They've shit the bed. And now they don't know what to do with the sheets. That's basically what they've done with Moyes. They knew they were in trouble. They knew something wasn't quite right, but they decided to lay in that bed, shit everywhere. And now they're going, oh, do I get rid of the sheets or do I just continue as they are? And that's basically what we're doing.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to change. And the fact that the news saying that, if we manage to stay up or get at least up to 12th and if we then manage to win Europa Conference, Moyes says, no, he cannot stay. This is what the season we've had with a transition season with loads of players coming in and players going. What's next season? Another transitional season. We have loads of players going out. We'll have loads of players coming in. And we are giving a guy 180 million to take us into a relegation battle for 3/4 of the season to maybe have a last minute flourish to get us mid-table to win a cup. And we're going to say, that's good enough. Can you repeat that next season, please? Because that's what's going to happen. It's exactly the same. And we're going to entrust this guy who spent 180 million, took him 7 months to understand Emerson can play left back and left wing back, and that, that he was a better option than Cresswell.
The biggest one for me was Paqueta as a 10 and then playing as an 8.
Oh, yeah.
Paqueta, £50 million. Played him as a 10 and then goes, I think he's an 8, actually. Scamacca, he doesn't understand how Scamacca plays and how to get players in and around him. We're going to trust this man with another season because he won us a Poxy Cup. No. Shake his hand, say thank you very much, you've won us a cup, go out on a high, go take a job somewhere else because now you've earned it. Very thankful. But the fact of the matter is you've got 1 year left. Sod that. We'll pay it off because we can't entrust you to build a team again, because when we trusted you to build something this season, it almost went to shit, apart from just a last minute piece. And when your players are sitting there going, they're not happy, and it's not a small portion, those players are going to want to leave in the summer if that manager is kept. And then that makes the rebuild even bigger and even larger to do. That's it. I'm out. So, and I'm done with that. But that's the last thing I'm going to say.
Yeah, we could go back on this all day about Moyes, but overall for the review, I think in large we're kind of on agreement that there are definitely areas we need to be better on defensively. I think we had a lot of moments offensively that were good and promising, despite the missed chances, which is a positive sign that we were at least creating something, because there have been instances in the past where we've very, very much struggled to do that. And we've got 2 massive Premier League home games coming up after the European tie. Is there a chance he'll win the cup? Yeah, I'd probably agree that it's very unlikely we'll win the cup with how we're playing and what we're going on, but you never know. But yeah, in the Premier League, we've got 2 massive home games. Southampton has to be a win. Doesn't matter how we do it, has to be 3 points. And then Newcastle 3 days later in April. So yeah, it's going to be a massive return after the international break in April. And we've got 2 months to save this club from relegation and also potentially get a cup. But we'll see how it goes. Hopefully this was valuable of an insight into seeing how the match went. And yeah, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe to the channel, as we are growing slowly but surely to 500 subscribers. So yeah, we really appreciate the support. Make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe as I mentioned. And yeah, lads, one thing left to say.
Come on, you Irons.